All right, this is Danny Santos back at you with the AstroDaddy podcast. And today I have one of my best friends and one of my closest confidants, Miss Amy Angelo, on the podcast. Hey, Amy.
Hi, Danny. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm
Oh
so
my
happy to
God.
be here.
I'm so happy to have you. Let's talk. What are we talking about today, Amy?
So today we're talking about the asteroid Vesta in astrology.
Yes.
And actually, before we start, I think we need to bring her in.
Yes.
To this setting.
Yes.
And so we brought a candle and a lighter. And I'm going to invoke her now.
Vesta, we welcome you in.
Here she is.
Yes. Hello. So
Goddess of home and hearth.
the eternal flame, as many people know her as. So, Amy, first of all, why don't you just tell people who you are, a little bit about how we got connected and your work with astrology?
Yeah, so my name's Amy Angelo. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I study astrology, and I have since 2018. I started studying, actually my astrology journey started by reading a book called Mysteries of the Dark Moon by Demetra George.
Yes, Demetra.
And I love Demetra. She's like my primary teacher. I'm so lucky to have been able to study with her, but I've studied with other teachers in New York like Shirley Sofer and John
Nice.
Marcasella. And so through my, I went on a trip to Greece with Demetra, and then she was like, hey, I'm teaching new coursework, or I'm teaching extended coursework on Hellenistic astrology. You should definitely take classes with me. So I have been enrolled for the past 3 years studying Hellenistic astrology. So I'm really like weaving in like modern astrology that I started with Hellenistic principles. And that's kind of where my astrology journey so far.
Yes. Well, and I'm an archetypal astrologer. So you know this, but for
Yes.
anybody listening, I use the astrological archetypes as a mean of psychoanalyzing the people that I'm working with. So the goal is to do people's birth charts, astrology readings, and then prepare them to do ayahuasca and plant medicine ceremonies.
Yes.
So you actually did my 3-month coaching program.
I did. And so we were connected through a coworker at my work,
McKenna.
at my day job, McKenna, shout
Love
out.
you, McKenna.
And so I was so happy that we connected immediately when we started working together. I just felt like I knew you forever.
Well, your moon is right on my ascendant.
Yes.
Capricorn. So, and we're both having that really intense Pluto transit.
We sure are. We sure are.
Okay, so we're here to talk about Vesta today.
Yes.
And
she's here with us.
she's here. We've lit the candle. The eternal flame is here.
Well, should I start by talking about how we started even talking about Vesta?
Absolutely. I love the story.
Yeah. So about a month ago, Danny asked to do a reading with me. And one of like the things that I just noticed immediately from looking at your wonderful chart is that you have Vesta on the ascendant.
Less than a degree apart, right?
Yes, like within 1 degree, very close. And so one of the things that Demetra taught in her, asteroid work, we should definitely talk about Demetra and her work with asteroids and kind of the history in the astrology community.
Me and Demetra also have flipped nodes. Her north node's Gemini and my north node's Sag. And it's like almost to the same degree.
Yeah.
So
There's something
there.
something
She and I got to meet someday.
You certainly
Here's
do.
looking at you, Demetra.
Yeah. And so basically Demetra taught that like when a planet is conjoined or an asteroid is conjoined the ascendant degree, basically you can kind of imagine that there are these spirits that are waiting to catch you at your birth, and you are like their devotees for life. And so you are a devotee of Vesta.
Oh, and it's got its pluses and minuses, girl.
It does. And I mean, immediately, like when I shared this information with you, you literally came to tears.
I know. It meant a lot to me because, I mean, as we've talked about, and for anyone listening, Vesta has a lot to do with sexuality. That work of like what you said to me, the Madonna whore complex.
Yeah. So like Vesta is this goddess of home and hearth. She was incredibly important in ancient Rome. She chose virginity. She actually is the daughter of Saturn, and her siblings are Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto, Ceres, and I'm missing one, Demeter. No, that's the same one. Ceres and Ceres, Demeter, and Hera, Juno. If I didn't know how to say her. So that's her siblings.
Yeah.
And so I feel like what the asteroid work really did was bring in these other entities into our consciousness. Like we know Saturn, we know Pluto, we know Neptune, we know all these masculine planetary archetypes. what about the feminine?
Well, and that's why asteroid work is so important, because it brings in the feminization of spirituality and all of that. There's only 2 placements in a birth chart, the moon and Venus.
Yeah. It's
You know?
really limiting like where women can, like the roles of women,
Yeah.
like mother or lover.
Yeah.
And these other asteroids bring in other aspects of the feminine experience that are so beautiful and integral
Yeah.
to life.
Well, and you were telling me that Vesta is both the oldest and the youngest sibling.
Yeah, so basically Saturn, so kind of the myth goes like Saturn was, there was a prophecy that his sibling or his children were going to overtake him, and he was like the old guard. He was like the big god on campus, whatever you want to say. And so basically he had a prophecy. So basically that one of his kids was going to overtake him. And so he ate all of his children. So he ate Vesta first.
Saturn
ate Vesta. Or basically I think he like ate her first and then
ate all the other ones.
And then ate all the other siblings and then threw her. Jupiter basically what happened was Jupiter was born on another island because like Jupiter's mother knew that he was eating his children. So Jupiter's mom threw a rock into Saturn's belly. So then Jupiter wasn't there, and then Jupiter came and saved all the siblings.
Yes.
So then Saturn regurgitated all the siblings.
And Vesta was the last one.
And Vesta was last. So she's the oldest
and
she's the youngest
sibling.
And I think that Vesta, all the other goddesses have all these stories about their journeying and their mythology and their trials and their tribulations of like life. And Vesta is so not dramatic because she's literally the goddess of home and hearth. Like she's so whole unto herself.
Yeah, yeah.
She like represents domestic tranquility, the home and the hearth.
Marriage? Is marriage
She
in there?
oversees marriage, though she is a virgin.
Yeah.
So, but she oversees more of like tranquility in the family. So family is a really big theme.
Okay.
And home life. And if we think about like the word hearth in home and hearth means like focus. And so she has this like creative focus of like bringing the fire, this is the central focus
The
of
eternal
her.
flame.
The eternal flame.
Yes.
And so not only is she like the sexuality component where she's a self-proclaimed virgin, she's whole unto herself, she doesn't need another to define her.
Yeah.
She's also very much associated with like preparing the self and perfecting the self to participate in the group mind. She's very collective.
It's very Virgo, but also Sagittarius.
Yes.
Because the virginity piece, Virgo, virgin.
Right.
But then also Sagittarius to share the eternal flame with the world.
For sure. And those are both like mutable, moving,
Oh, so she's very
creative.
mutable, kind of.
Yeah, because I was thinking like, yeah, she is like Virgo. Like I had that same kind of thought process. But really, she does have the fire, which is so unique to her. And so she, I think so much of what you do is like a healer. Like she has this aspect, like in astrology, she really represents like making sure that we're transforming ourselves in an inner way. Like we are our internal light in the darkness.
You know that I'm working with ayahuasca.
Yes.
And I'm about to do a 6-day ayahuasca retreat. It's called the Dieta. So you work with a specific plant as a means of merging it to your soul.
Beautiful.
And
Wow.
the plant I'm about to work with is the white rose. So white for purity, rose for like boundaries and stuff. And this message of like the vow is coming to me again and again. The vow. And I'm like, am I about to take a vow of chastity?
I mean, that's interesting because that's something like that Vesta did take a vow of chastity, but they're also like people who have Vesta archetype in their body and their destiny and their, they're at their ascendant. Okay. That I can imagine that is like a wavering of like this idea of like, am I whole unto myself and how do I share my,
sexual energy with myself.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And like, there's a complex kind of relationship to sexuality when you are working with the Vesta archetype.
Yeah, well, and
ayahuasca.
ayahuasca.
And ayahuasca it kind of is an interesting.
Yeah,
it goes
yeah.
both in both realms.
Well, and for me, I've struggled my whole life with sexuality, like having, realizing I was gay at 11 years old and being in a Catholic conservative family and not getting to express that. And then on top of that, like becoming a sex addict at one point in my life because I just didn't have that energy to be able to express sexuality in a healthy way publicly. So it turned into like going into the shadows and trying to find validation and stuff there. And then, you know, having some wild experiences where I got hurt, or being in a relationship with a man who is married, or, you know, falling in love with another guy who is an addict. Like, the theme of sex and sexuality has brought a lot of chaos into my life. So I feel like there is part of me that's wondering, like, would I be better off taking a vow of chastity with this Vesta archetype?
I mean, I think that that's like one of the lifelong
Struggles
and like things that you have specific awareness around.
Yeah.
That you can, like, being a virgin doesn't mean not having sex, but it can mean not having sex if you take a vow of chastity for yourself.
Yeah.
But it's more about being independent, whole into yourself. And I think it's so interesting that she's this like virgin Vesta, but she also is like reigns over like marriage or home and family life. And so I think that like as long as you are feeling like you can contribute to, like, you know, if you want to have a family one day, or like you want to have like a, you know, you bring in the light into the home. That's like the important thing, the hearth, the focus.
Got it.
That would be, if, you know, but it doesn't mean like
that I have to be
you have to be alone. You don't have to be the hermit.
I know. We got the hermit archetype.
And you don't have to be the hermit all the time. You can be the high priestess.
Well, the high priestesses were incredibly sexual.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about this, like temple priestesses, and that, you know, the art of sacred sexuality, and teaching people, like younger men in society, about how to have sex and how to be good to a woman, and like that kind of energy.
Totally. Definitely. And I think that, I mean, in the lineage of Vesta in ancient Rome, she like had temple priestesses, and they were incredibly important in ancient Rome. And the Vestal Virgins, like, you know, it was really hard to be a woman in ancient times.
Yeah.
She absolutely the Vestal Virgins had a lot of power. In court, they didn't have to take oaths because they were trusted, like, by default by the system. And that's like not it. Like, that's not the reality for a lot of women in ancient times.
Yeah, they had status.
They had status, and they were completely focused on keeping and tending to the fire in Vesta's temple in Rome, and it was extremely dangerous if the fire went away. If it went out, they would be punished. It would be scary.
Well, and if the Vestas broke their vow of chastity, the Vestal Virgins, they were buried alive, right?
Yeah, they were tortured or murdered, and it's really intense. And so, of course, that if that's the reality of like honoring Vesta or a Vestal Virgin, like that's the reality. Of course, there's like this conflict with sex. Like, it can seem dangerous. Like, if I am no longer a virgin, my life is at risk. Like, that can be really, if I'm not whole into myself, I'm in danger.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
If I'm not tending to the flame.
Oh, okay. So as a metaphor for my life, the way that I have not been whole and unto myself has led me to a lot of dangerous situations, especially when it comes to sex and sexuality.
Yeah. Wow.
So, but then the other side of this is I teach sexuality in groups. My friends Lisa, Nadej, and I do like the erotic rose rebirth, erotic Cosmo retreats. We just did the erotic shadow. Wow. So like teaching people about sexuality is maybe part of that Vesta archetype.
Totally. And also like that's 100% like what a beautiful way to honor Vesta, and teaching people about different ways of experiencing. Like, what do you guys like focus on in those groups?
Well, erotic rose rebirth, we teach people about boundaries. Because the plant medicine of the rose is like kind of how do you be whole and unto yourself. So the white rose, I picked that because it's purity and boundaries with yourself. Like, you're protecting yourself. You're using your purity as a means of like falling more in love with yourself. Whereas the yellow rose is like boundaries with your friends. Pink rose is boundaries with love. You're giving as much love as possible and still setting boundary. Red rose is passion and sexuality, and, you know. And then erotic cosmos, we teach people about astrology. And anytime you're attracted to one sign of the zodiac, you're actually trying to become more like that sign.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, you know? That's really interesting.
Yeah, and then erotic shadow, we go into like existential kink and like, you know, some other really interesting stuff about the unconscious mind. but
That's
to teach people about.
I feel like so much of your work is in the unconscious realm. Like you are
Midheaven Scorpio.
yeah. Like the ayahuasca journey,
Yeah.
like going into the dark,
Yeah.
I mean, is there a more Vesta experience than taking ayahuasca and being on your own subconscious inner journey?
Oh, I've never thought about that. Being whole and unto yourself.
You have to trust yourself. Like, so, I mean, I've never done it before, so you can tell
Yeah,
me.
yeah. Well, we're going to do it together.
Yeah. Like, I've never done it before, but like, I can imagine like the things that are coming out of you, like it's a whole self journey.
Yeah, well, and you have to relive like childhood trauma and experiences, and like it helps you reintegrate yourself. Literally, I guess being whole and unto yourself by picking up the fragmented pieces of yourself and putting them back.
Wow.
So
Beautiful.
yeah, it's very intense though.
Well, and it's a very psychological,
Mm-hmm.
and also like from what I've heard, like, you know, when you're taking plant medicine, you're taking like you always talk about ayahuasca being a woman,
Yeah.
being a, how do you explain her?
She's a feminine deity, like, you know,
She's
I almost believe she is an extension of Pluto. Like she comes from that camp.
like Kali.
Yeah, Kali, Shiva.
Beautiful.
She's amongst those deities. So in my life coaching program, when I teach Pluto or when I teach Scorpio, I always teach ayahuasca as well. Because we think about the root chakra and the sacral chakra, that's the elimination systems of the body. And Scorpio rules those areas of the body.
And like also like all your fears can come out, your deep psychological kind of like traumas, I guess, like childhood traumas or whatever, unresolved things.
The things
like,
that fragment us.
Yeah, the things that don't. Yeah. So then you go, wow.
Yeah, and your North Node is Scorpio.
It
So
sure is.
my interpretation of that is you need to go into these archetypes, you know, being willing to change, experience the death and the sex and the transformation. North Node Scorpio is not easy territory.
It's not. I can confirm. It's
Well,
nice
and
to
your
be,
Taurus sun.
And yes, so it can inherently feel like I'm going against,
Yeah.
you know, what
Your instincts
my
are.
instincts. Totally.
So, but I'm curious, with this strong Vesta placement on my ascendant, this doesn't mean I have to be single for the rest of my life, does it?
I don't think it means you have to be single. I think it
Okay.
means that you are engaged. Like, I think Vesta is a very collective energy, right?
Yeah.
It's very much about the group.
Okay.
It's actually like Vesta herself is like tending the flame so that we can see, tending the flame so that we can purify, tending the flame so that there can be self-renewal.
Yeah.
And so like I think that it doesn't mean you have to be single. It means that when you are, I mean, the theme of sex becomes a really interesting topic,
Yeah.
right? Like, you know, maybe you have, and also, I mean, when I think about this, I have to look at like your Venus and your Mars, like
For
everything else.
sure.
So, but I think that it's more of like the energy of Vesta is coming through you to teach you life lessons. And like
Got
Vesta, like
it.
there's something like about her singleness that, or she was beautiful. She could have married, but Apollo wanted to marry her. She wasn't undesirable.
Yeah.
She was extremely desirable, but she said, no, like I want to be a
whole.
woman. Like
Yeah.
women, I mean, if we think about the other goddesses, think about the torment of Ceres,
Oh my
losing
God.
her daughter Persephone. Think about Hera having been cheated on by Zeus over and over again.
Yeah.
She like was like away from that trauma and drama.
Yeah.
And so she was so much more interested in tranquility and peace and all that, all those qualities of life. And that's why like the endeavoring of the other goddesses, she's inherently different.
She
Vesta.
chooses to separate herself for
Yeah.
sake of sanity and self-love.
Going to the higher realms. to
Maybe
be-
that's it.
Yeah.
It's Vesta's about loving yourself first.
Yes,
Being whole unto yourself. It's kind of clicking a little bit more as we talk about it.
it is.
So when somebody, for anybody listening, because we're not just talking about my life here, but when Vesta's in a birth chart, how can we understand it?
I think that when Vesta's in a birth chart,
Because everyone's got one.
yeah, everyone has Vesta. And so sometimes like Vesta can be conjoined planets. Like we might want to look if it's conjoined the sun, the ascendant, or the moon. That
Yeah.
archetype could be really prominent in
Yeah.
your life, specifically in your life path, who you are, your identity.
Yeah.
And then when it's in other houses, we look to the house to understand where does the Vesta archetype emerge in the life. Is it like in my chart, it's in Cancer in the 11th house. So it's very
Yes.
much about my community,
The intimacy you bring to the world is how I see that. The
I
intimacy you
love
bring to your
that.
groups.
Yes.
You know?
And there's like a, being in Cancer, it's in the moon's realm.
Yeah.
And the moon is nurturing. The moon wants to, bring healing and
emotional sensitivity.
definitely.
Yeah.
And so these are kinds of things that we start to consider when we're looking at the placement, the house. I use whole sign houses that I should say that in my astrology practice. I use whole sign houses.
I use equal.
Yep. So basically sign for a house. And so we look at who the ruler is, and that's kind of where we can begin our assessment. But Vesta, everyone has Vesta in their chart, and this archetype lives through humanity. And so I think it's really an interesting practice to understand the themes of her. So we can kind of recap them.
Yeah.
The sacred sexuality, being whole unto yourself.
The home,
the hearth, fire. She's here. She's here with us right now.
She is.
There's something really genuinely for thousands of years, the sacred flame in Rome.
Yeah, the eternal flame.
The eternal flame was tended to until Christianity came in and wiped out any kind of paganism. But the point is that there's an eternal lineage to Vesta. I was trying to explain to my friend, Vesta was she was on coins in ancient Rome. Like, she was so in everyone's consciousness. Like, everyone has, we talked about this, like a Vesta or a hearth or a fireplace. Yeah. And so the point being is there's something so she's not so foreign. Like, she's very in our subconscious as humans.
Yeah, because it's deeply rooted in the culture of Rome.
Yep.
So I guess that makes sense. And she's one of the major asteroids.
Yeah, she is. She's the brightest asteroid in the sky.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she is.
Eternal flame baby.
Yeah, she's out there shining. She's big.
When I do readings for my clients, I just, after our session, started incorporating Vesta as part of the readings.
Oh, incredible.
So the way that I read it is the eternal flame. It's the part of you that is unlike anybody else. Nobody can mimic the way that you do something in your Vesta placement.
Oh, I love
so
that.
it's
That's
yours.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's your slice of God that he made you with that nobody can touch, even if people tried. So your Vesta in the 11th house in Cancer, that intimacy, Cancer, that you bring to the world or to your friendships or your groups, nobody can touch the way that you do it. The way you love your friendship, the way you love the world.
Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah. So, and then I got my Vesta in the first house in whole. You use what's your system? It's called
whole sign.
Whole sign. Okay, wanted to make sure. So I guess if that's Vesta's in my first house, how would you interpret that?
I would say, and it's conjoined the ascendant degree. So it was I think I look at it as okay, when Danny was born, Vesta, the asteroid, was literally rising on the ascendant.
Yeah, that's true.
Literally, the earth.
She was smiling over me.
She was she brought you. She was Danny, you are mine, and we're working together.
She claimed me.
She claimed you. So if we think about the first house being body, your character, your vitality, in Saturn's realm, there's something very bringing the
Capricorn.
Structure. Because you're a Capricorn rising. There's a structure of ritual and of the fire and the flame that you bring. You are a spiritual worker, through and through, all of the things that you bring to the world, the psychological healing, the physical healing, the journeying with ayahuasca. You use your body as this vessel to heal, and that's very much a Vesta archetype. And I think that you are Vesta.
I'll take it.
You are Vesta. You and Vesta are the themes of Vesta, and the archetype is something that you will experience and see throughout your life forever.
Yeah, yeah.
And so in the first house in your body.
And I think about when you did my reading, you were talking about how people would take that eternal flame and they would light each other's flames, and everybody had the home and the hearth, and Vesta being inside everyone's home.
Yes.
And lighting the way. Throughout my life, I feel when I was in high school, I had a big impact on my high school, and I feel people changed because I was there, and I was in the musicals and Homecoming King, and it brought a lot of joy to the collective in a big way. And
wow,
I think about that experience as I age, I want to do the same thing with my work with ayahuasca. I lit up my local community, and I've got my South Node and Gemini, so I'm good at that. But to bring it now to the world, to light up the world with my work with ayahuasca.
You are absolutely going to do that. I'm so excited for your journey.
Me
And like,
too.
I remember that you told me that after the reading, it struck you this like archetype of Vesta, and you created a meditation with Vesta.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that again?
Did you do the meditation with me in the course? I can't
I don't
remember if we did.
either, but tell us about your meditation, like the
All
work
right.
that it inspired and
Yeah,
in your course.
Well, in my spiritual life coaching program, I teach the 12 archetypes of astrology, and each one represents a different tool of life. So for one of the weeks, I consider Vesta the blue flame, or at least like my flame is blue. So
Yes.
that's why I wore blue today. And in my program, there's 3 weeks that we do meditations that focus on the underworld. So we go into the unconscious, we go to the darkness, and then I take, the client into I call it the wasteland of the underworld. And the veil thins through this process, and a single blue flame comes down from the heavens, and it splits into 8 flames because it's week 8, and like that Scorpio kind of archetype coming in, 8th sign of the zodiac. And I take people to like meet an ancestor or deal with something in their unconscious and help them regain a light. So that's,
wow.
No,
No, we didn't do that one.
Okay.
I would remember that one. That one's beautiful.
It was really good, but that didn't come until after our work when you told me about Vesta. And then I kind of had like a vision of it in one of my ayahuasca ceremonies.
Wow.
So I pulled that experience and then brought it into my coaching program.
It probably came so, I wonder, like, was the creative process, it just came through you like so quickly? Like it just.
Well, so I believe astrology inherently is a Pisces archetype.
Okay.
When we think about the cosmos and the heavens, and like it's very Piscean, right? The ocean and the sky, the heaven and the heaven and the waters. And then I think of ayahuasca as an underworld archetype.
Okay.
It's also the waters, but it's the depth of the waters. So ayahuasca and astrology, both having, Pisces and Scorpio, archetypally, they go together. So every time I do ayahuasca, I'm being tutored in astrology.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
Cool.
Like I'm taught deeper things about the archetypes. Like I'm downloads and knowledge that I didn't get anywhere else. And it's like how I'm writing this book. I'm going to be releasing a book called The Medicine of the Cosmos.
Oh, unbelievable.
So it's going to be all of the sacred archetypes that I've learned of astrology through ayahuasca.
That is incredible.
So I want to do ayahuasca with you so bad. I want to lead you in ceremony.
I know. I think that like astrology is a language.
It is.
And once you understand the language, it can be visual, it can be words, it can be things, it can be everything.
Yeah.
It can be everything.
And as an archetypal astrology, I don't dive too deeply into the predictive side of things.
Okay.
I'm more about like dissecting and analyzing someone's psychology as a means of helping them heal their trauma.
Beautiful.
Whereas like a lot of the work you do is electional and like, well, first of all, explain to my listeners what electional astrology is.
Oh yeah. Electional astrology is basically like
You're electing.
Yeah, you elect a chart and you basically can choose a date and time to do something.
For it to be most favorable, right?
Yeah, for it to be most favorable. Yeah. Exactly.
We've got Uranus on the ascendant at the time of recording this.
We sure do. We had a great electional chart.
Yeah. We had some technical difficulties at the beginning, but
hey, we made it. Here we are.
Here we are, baby.
Here we are. But yeah, so electional astrology is just like harnessing the best outcome based on where the planets are at any given time.
Well, I elected my nephew's birthday.
What do you mean?
I chose his birthday, and my sister like got induced on her pregnancy, so I chose for him to be Scorpio sun, Scorpio moon.
Wow.
Yeah, and obviously you can't pick the exact hour, but I was like,
No.
have him on November 7th.
Oh, wow. So he's like a RuPaul double Scorpio, new moon.
Well,
fabulous.
if Scorpio's that ayahuasca archetype, I think he's in the process of helping our family shed a lot of the generational trauma and like really bringing us together. And it's a very powerful, and I'm a Pisces sun, Pisces moon. Right. And then his north node is right on my descendant. So I'm wondering maybe one day we'll work together with like plant medicine or something, or there's something there.
Yeah, you'll have a lot to teach each other.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So,
amazing. Yeah, I would say like while I do study Hellenistic astrology, which is a lot more of a framework. Like it has a framework and it has it's ancient. Like it comes from old sources.
Yeah.
Like you're reading old source texts and trying to construct what the astrologers 2,000 years ago were doing to your best ability. But humanity changes and the times change. And I think that the work of the asteroids specifically, like I also allow the work of the asteroids and the myths of the asteroids to like come through a chart and understand more about a person, about specific details, about specific themes of their life. And that's more of a modern perspective. And if anyone's interested in like learning about asteroids or what they mean or where they are, there's an incredible book that I have here. I'm gonna plug Demetra's book. It's called Astrology for Yourself. And she goes through all of the different asteroids, how to find where they are in your chart, what that means. And it's a really like great workbook.
Yeah.
And I think that there's more than just Vesta, but Vesta was so prominent in your chart and that like really like that just sparked like a huge amount of creativity.
Yeah.
I mean, Vesta's so very creative force, a very creative focus. Like,
well, and learning this like changed my life.
Yes.
I was like, oh, I like this whole concept of like sex and sexuality and the virginity and whole and unto yourself. Like, it's really helped me understand the trajectory of my life.
That's like all I could ask for anyone to take away from an astrology reading.
Well, so and that's what session does, you know? That's what you do for people, and that's what I do.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. Like help be a mirror where people can see their wonder.
Yeah. Well, in your birth chart, you also have an asteroid that you were born on your ascendant.
Yeah. So Melusina. I was really lucky. I had a reading with Demetra when her books were still open, and so asteroid work is hugely integral into her practice. And so I didn't know anything about Melusina. Melusina is like a two-tailed mermaid. There's a whole myth about her.
Well, it's like she's normal for like 6 days out of the week, right?
Yeah. Then every Saturday she goes into the water. She basically is married and she's married. She's got a husband. She's like, life is perfect, whatever. And then she has a husband who doesn't know that she is a two-tailed mermaid.
And that one day of the week,
every
she has
Saturday,
to go.
Saturn day. Every Saturn day, she's got to go to the well or to the spring and go and become a mermaid and be on her own in secret.
Yes.
And
it's almost Vestal in a way, like that, to be isolated during that time.
Yeah, needing to renew and needing to transform and to take shape. And so she was a medieval mythological being. She was like she's a siren.
Was she a goddess?
Siren. She's more of like a siren.
Okay.
More of like, I mean, yeah, I think she has a goddess energy, but she's more of like, I don't know if she's like, she wasn't as ingrained in the collective consciousness as like a Vesta, which was like hugely influential. But she's definitely in like France. There's like little towns named after her. So, but this was so weird when I found out this asteroid was on my ascendant because, first of all, that is so obscure.
Well, and she's claiming you.
She's claiming me at my birth. She claimed me as her own, and the logo Starbucks is a Melusina. Yeah. And my dad, like in my local community, does a lot of business with Starbucks. Like his company like started working with Starbucks like way back in the early 2000s when Starbucks was blowing up, and so like that was like a big source of like his business and back in the day and even today. But that was one interesting thing. And like my parents I grew up on the beach in Florida where I was born, and they have mermaids all over their house.
Whoa. So
I can't hundreds of pictures of mermaids. Like it's unbelievable. Like we joke that it's like the Mermalair, like from SpongeBob. So yeah, I mean it is really interesting when I would have never, I mean, I knew that I was surrounded by mermaids and I knew like
this myth unconsciously you had an awareness, but to learn that Melusina was on the ascendant
changed my life.
Yeah.
And so I've been reading about her, and I think it's a really lifelong pursuit. And like I'm like, why isn't there a movie about Melusina? She's got a good story.
She does. Well, and also the idea of isolation, taking time for yourself, but also maybe secrets.
Yep.
Those being things that are really prominent in the Melusina story.
Yeah, especially around the lover.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
in
So
relationship?
I go to this float tank spa every month called Vessel Floats.
Yeah.
It's like a
What
sensory
is it called?
deprivation tank. Vessel Floats.
Oh, I thought you said Vestal, and I was like about to freak out. Vestal floats.
Vessel Floats. And
Yeah.
I go every month, and a lot of times by myself. And I
Yeah.
float, and it's completely dark and it's silent.
On a Saturday.
On a lot of times on a Saturday.
There you go. So
So
you're fitting the mythology of this story
I in my body.
in your body.
So that's for sure.
Well, and also we did a session recently, and we were pulling some cards. We did a breath work, and then the card that we pulled was called the Wise Salt.
Yes.
Do you remember?
I
And
do.
then you were going to the float tank immediately after to be in the Epsom water.
It was incredible. Yeah, the salt water, the being on my own little journey. I just
Well, the
love it.
isolation and everything, like, I don't know, that's just such an interesting mythology as well. But this is just showing the power of asteroids in the birth chart.
Yep.
Like, it's one thing if somebody has the moon right on the ascendant, like, they'd follow that mythology and the lunar cycle and Cancer and all of that. But what a lot of people aren't aware of is there are like tens of thousands of asteroids.
Oh, absolutely. You can go to astro.com and
They've got a database.
they have a full database.
Yeah.
You can go to when you're on astro.com, you go to extended chart selection, and then you can just start adding all asteroids.
Yeah. Psyche and
so
Eros.
interesting. Psyche and Eros. You can do the name of your partner.
You did. So I was dating a guy,
Yes.
and you looked up his name in my chart, and he fell right into my fourth house.
Yes.
You're like, he's in your house. And we've broken up since, but
Yeah, he's in your fourth house.
There you
I mean, there's asteroids for everything, but I think that one of the big cornerstones of Demetra's work, or what she really opened, I think, a lot of people up to, was that myth is something that all of us can tap into.
Yeah.
And that we can all learn from myth, and we can all share myths through our own lives.
Yeah.
And while I might have never known that Melusina was an important part or cornerstone of my life, my being,
Your mythology
my
as
mythology.
Amy Angelo.
Exactly. Now I know. And
Yeah.
now that's fundamentally changed me. And the same with Vesta. And you can add different asteroids and see where they land and what that might mean about your life. And it's crazy because Hellenistic astrology, this would be, I mean, they use a lot of different lots and things like this. And so maybe not so crazy, but this is a very different approach. And so it just goes to show how vast and incredible and how many possibilities that there are and how creative astrology can be
Yeah.
in your understanding of your life.
Well, and the concept of synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
I think about you being a Virgo rising, your seventh house is Pisces, my 3 planets in your seventh house. I very much view you, although you came to me for work to do the breath work and the spiritual coaching, I view you as an advisor in a major way, or as a close, in your moon on my ascendant, we are family,
Yes.
but also your last name being Angelo. And I'm very connected to angels and that kind of consciousness and vibration. And anytime someone has angel in their name, there's also a special connection that I have with those people as well. So finding your 7th house Pisces, Amy Angelo is your name. I don't know. I feel like God sent you to me on a big level.
I feel so lucky that we connected.
Me
Thank you,
too.
McKenna.
Yeah,
I can't
McKenna,
thank you
thank
enough. Shout out.
Shout out McKenna.
Yeah, incredible that we connected.
Yeah.
I feel exactly the same.
But it's I'm a professional astrologer, and a friend of mine, my friend Nadej, she told me, go seek out a healer who does a mode that you're not familiar with.
Okay.
And
That's
when
great advice.
I know.
I feel yeah.
So I was like, okay. And then I was like, you know what? I'm already working with Amy, doing work for you. Maybe. So I purchased a session with you, and it really shifted my whole perspective.
I'm incredibly happy to hear that because I think that that's all astrology just can help you change your mind. It can help you see yourself. It can help you see the world.
Yeah.
It can help you understand things that are not
What's going
totally
on
within the grasp of understanding in mundane reality.
Yeah. Well,
And that's pretty cool.
That's the benefit. I think astrology is a great tool to unpack what's wrong. And then ayahuasca is a great pairing to do the shadow work necessary to work on it.
Right. Get yourself out of the
the
you know,
theory
yeah.
and get into the practice.
And that's what I was going to say. Like we've done such incredible work together because like astrology is very heady. It's a very heady.
It's cerebral.
It's cerebral. It's
That's
like
why I try to make it as
thought,
basic as possible when I do reading.
which is exactly what needs to happen because even it's all goes down to the basics, but it's a very heady pursuit. And like the work that we did with breath work, with meditation, with getting into the body.
Yeah. To unpack what's going on.
To ground into the body. Yeah. To just understand like that without our body, there's nothing we can do.
But Amy, I just have to say thank you for coming on today. I hope this is the first of many episodes that we can record together.
Yes, we have more asteroids to talk about.
I want to do a whole asteroid series with you.
Let's do it. I'm here. Thank you for having me. I love being here in LA, City of Angels.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful to connect with you in person. This is the first time we've met
I
IRL. Like, what a time.
We've been internet friends for months.
Yeah.
You know?
Internet friends forever.
AFF. Oh, no, IFF. IFF. Two things. I think the podcast is going to be moving to virtual sessions.
Okay.
So I'll be doing, instead of in person, because I'm moving to Michigan for a little while, there's a website called Riverside. So I'll be probably streaming through there. So we'll be able to do virtual.
Beautiful.
And then the other thing is, Amy, can you please let people know how they can book a session with you, how they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram as Angelo.
Angelo.
Angelo. But you can also go to my website, amy-angelo.com.
Yes.
And you can book a session with me on my website. I would love to work with anyone, talk about asteroids, find asteroids that are connected with their ascendant, other planets. Let me know what you're interested in. Let me know if you're straight up into like Hellenistic principles or if you're straight up into some asteroid work. I can go both ways.
We did both.
We did both.
You know?
Absolutely. So I'm here.
I love you, Amy.
I love you too, Danny.
This is the AstroDaddy podcast. If you're interested in booking me or Amy for a reading, reach out. I'm also launching a spiritual breathwork program. So it's going to be going through the 12 signs of the zodiac. There's playlists and music for each of the zodiac signs. So it's helping to unpack some of that unconscious. And then I have my spiritual life coaching program. If you want to learn the master tools of each of the zodiac signs and how to use them, you can also contact me for that. I'm running a special on it right now. But other than that, this is the AstroDaddy podcast. Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye.